Hey everyone, I'm Todd Wayne along with Ronnie Heelan. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Paranormal Podcast. Coming up on this episode, we're talking with Vince Kelien. He's an urban and paranormal investigator. Vince has been exploring abandoned and haunted places for over 10 years. He was introduced to the paranormal at Waverly Hills in 2010, where a ghost encounter on his very first day made him realize that there's more to this world than we can see. Now, in the years since, he's had the privilege of helping to repair and maintain the historical structure, give tours, manage the location's social media channels. He started the Waverly Hills TikTok account and gained more than 100,000 followers before he left. Now, these days, he travels around the country, discovering brand new abandoned places and locations, and revisits some of his old favorites. Over the past year, he's been to Saratoga County Homestead, Norwich State Hospital, Pennhurst Asylum, as well as other undisclosed locations up and down the eastern seaboard. So grab yourself a drink and a snack, turn the lights off on the way back, find yourself a nice comfy spot, and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Okay. So how you been tonight?
Oh, just pizza for dinner. Kid upstairs acting a fool, and normal stuff.
Right. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Is this like how we're doing it? Are we live to go and everything?
We are good to go. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I started off in 2010 as a haunted house actor and a caboose and sometimes a tour guide, and for a couple seasons a private overnight host at the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. I'd only ever had my first initial paranormal instance when I was, I want to say about 5 years old. I just chalked it up when I got to be an adult as imagination, but getting into it a little bit later and realizing that there was no real actual aspect for it was indifferent. I was running back and forth down the hallway, acting a fool like kids do, and I ran to the back bedroom, jumped on the bed, I turned around, and I saw a little girl crouched over in the corner. Fast forward to 2010, I was wondering why that wasn't working well. I had been fascinated with just spooky things in general. I didn't believe in ghosts at the time, didn't really know that there was anything that I could see or hear, and chalked most of it up to be goofiness on my part. Saw that Waverly was holding auditions for a haunted house event. And I used that as my way to get up there just to talk to the owner, Tina, to tell her I lived 5 minutes away and that I was willing to do whatever it took to be there. And it was almost right off the bat. There was no like real questions or anything. It was just like, when can you start?
Heck yeah.
So I had started the next week and was putting together some walls on the maze downstairs on the first floor for the haunt. And it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, dead middle of summer, hot as hell outside. And for anyone who knows or whoever doesn't know, whenever you have a building of that magnitude, if you have a concrete building, it's just nothing but concrete and metal, it retains heat. During the winter, it retains the cold. So if it's 100 outside, it's going to be 105 inside the building. If it is 30 degrees outside, it's going to be probably about 20 degrees inside. So I'd had enough for the day. I packed up my tools and went down to what we call the main staircase, the main glass case, the main staircase door, and pulled my tools out, locked the door up, went outside into the parking lot. I didn't realize that you could park closer to the door, and because I didn't want to have any problems or issues, so I didn't want to step on anyone's toes, so I parked out in the parking lot the way that I would for anything there, for any time you would go up there, whether it was a haunt or anything else. I opened up my trunk to the car and heard what sounded like a ball bouncing. I turned around, look at the building, and there's a red dodgeball that comes bouncing out of the 4th floor solarium and down into the neighborhood. If you've ever been there, if you've just seen pictures, you see that it's like the building is like a giant elbow. On the back side of the building, at the bottom of the hill, there's a big cul-de-sac, a neighborhood, and that's where the ball bounced into. I left all of my stuff in the parking lot, jumped in the car, trunk's wide open. I take off down the hill. I get down to the gate. I open up the gate. I actually hit the hood of my car with the gate, and didn't get back into the car to move the car back. I was terrified. I just kept pushing the gate forward and got it over the hood and jumped in the car. Right before I was jumping in the car, I heard that ball again. I turned up to look up at the hill, and the ball was coming down this way. This time with laughter. I left the gate open and took off down the hill. I called the owners. I was like, I know you're on the way back from dinner. The gate's open for you. If you wouldn't mind grabbing my tools out of the parking lot, I'll be there in the morning to explain what happened. And she said, okay, cool. So arriving the next morning, Tina essentially said, it sounds to me like you got initiated. So me being fearful of what the owner would have to say about me parking next to the door, she was not upset about how anything went that day. And I was worried about the door,
Yeah. Tina's pretty cool.
Yeah, she's I'm glad everything is back to the way it was. That whole I can touch on that just a little bit. So I was on the wrong end of the debacle at Waverly this go around. When they were having issues. They weren't there when I came back, and basically they were just lying to me pretty much the whole time as to why they weren't there and all that other kind of stuff. So I was on the wrong end of the stick for pretty much the whole duration of the issue up there.
So not Tina and Charlie they weren't lying to you. It was whoever else was there.
Yeah, so there were some people who were lying. That was not Tina or Charlie or any one of their staff or anyone up there.
So were you a part of their army, Charlie and Tina's army?
I wasn't, because I was being lied to, and Tina and Charlie wasn't there, and they also weren't talking to me. Come to find out, when everything was all done and said with, that the only reason why they weren't talking to me was because I was there. So, and with all of that's fine and dandy. We're all good now. But we weren't talking for a little while. Tina and I went out to dinner. About a month after 2 or 3 months after I was gone. And kind of explained everything to each other and how things went, and neither parties knew, what the other ones knew. You know what I mean? She was out of the loop. I was out of the loop. One of the board members that with us was out of the loop. If you were following everything, Tina and Charlie's army, Ernie Pack and Denise Pack and I were all at each other's throats during the entire thing. Afterwards, we squashed things and we got things together, and everybody's okay. And I need to actually make it out there to Fort Duffield at some point in time to go check it out. But it was a lot to handle. It was a lot to bear, especially since my parents have never really been around. I've got a stepmom, and that's about it. So, like I said, I've been at Waverly off and on since 2010. Tina and Charlie were like my parents in any aspect or shape or way that you can possibly think of. So much so to the point to where I was living at the apartments at the bottom of the hill before they were all cracked out. But that was before. And during that time, Waverly and that apartment complex manager had a wonderful relationship. Yeah, so I mean, they were like my parents in a whole lot of ways. A whole lot of stuff. I would go to them for approval for things that I really probably shouldn't have. Like, hey, Tina, what do you think about this? Or, whatever. Well, don't do that. Oh, okay, Mom. Whoops, Tina. But yeah, so like everything's good now. But during the whole thing, I was on the wrong side of that little debacle, but unknowingly as to why. Yeah. So both parties were not in the know-how, and neither one of us knew, exactly why.
But it's all everybody's good now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, everybody's good now. So. It's funny. Speaking of Denise and Ernie, the three of us hated each other up until the point. See, I know that Ernie had been there around the time that I started there a long time ago, but I never knew him. Was never around him or anything, so I didn't know him. But right around last year, we were both vending at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, and if you guys haven't ever been there, you should.
Yeah, we're going.
Great place. Pamela and all those guys are awesome. But that was our first time meeting. Like, we had talked and squashed everything over the phone, but that was like our first time meeting. And they were just like me, they were passionate about the building. They loved the building.
Yep.
During the whole tenure of those 2 years that I was back or whatever, it was me and Chad who were taking care of the building. Like every single like nook and cranny, every single little thing that needed to be done. Sometimes even stuff that I told the people that were in charge at the time that needed to be done wouldn't do it, so I just did it myself without them knowing. Because there's a leak from the roof coming down, it needs to be fixed like pronto. No word, no shake, no nothing, and I'd just be like, okay, well, I'm going to go up there with some tar and I'm going to fix this now without your consent because you're not listening. But all of that stuff is in the past, and I think everybody is doing well. I was just up at Waverly for a private overnight with a group called Seeking Spirits. If you haven't checked them out, you should. They're very young, so they're very impressionable, and they're very, very scared. So it's and they're new too. So it's a fun combination of everything. But we were up there recently, like I said, and we were kind of filming like a YouTube video or whatever, and they were I noticed a whole lot of stuff since I've been gone. There was some talk about the fire escape that it needed to either be when I was there anyway, there was talk that the fire escape had to be either taken off or had to be repurposed or a new one put up. And those doors at the end of the corridors, at the end of the hallways, needed to be pulled off and new ones put on, whatever the case. And they have each floor has new doors. I assume the next step is the fire escape. If you know anything about preservation and restoration, it's a lengthy process, especially for a building like Waverly, where they've had, up until the point to where Tina and Charlie bought it, it was abandoned.
Yep.
And the guy, Alberhaski, I don't usually talk about people, but Alberhaski didn't have any love or anything for the building. Some people, they see an old building and they're like, that's a lot of property. I paid next to nothing for this. So if it just falls, it's fine. Well, for other people like us or like Tina and Charlie, it's a totally different situation. I go into abandoned places all the time and just see nothing but decay and ruin. But I look at the building itself and I'm like, this isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Why doesn't the state do anything with this? So like just in fact, seeing that whenever I went up there last time, saw the new doors up and saw some things moved around. There was some things that the Historical Society did before when I was there that I didn't necessarily agree with, and when I went back, everything was back to the way it was, which was awesome.
Good. They added lights to the stairs too, didn't they? All the stairways.
The lights were there before, but they were a little too bright before, and now they're kind of like right where they need to be if you're doing like an overnight or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not terrible, but I mean, for fire reasons and safety hazards and everything, you have to have them, unfortunately. It's funny, if you go to take like a night shot, you'll see like a red glow from like all 5 floors, and you're like, what is that? You're like, it's the exit signs. But yeah, it was an awesome chapter in my life, to be able to go back and do what I did, not for the politics, but there was so much stuff that I did up there that I'm not much of a bragger, but yeah, when I was there, I wanted a pat on the back because there was stuff that they weren't doing that needed to be done, and I would yell and scream and everything. Like, it was like, nobody, you ever been locked in a room and scream and nobody can hear you, is what it felt like. And at some points in times, I was like, well, why don't we do this? And they would be like, well, the lawsuit issue and everything else is taking up too much money. I was like, well, if you stop it, we wouldn't have this fucking issue. Sorry, Steve.
Right?
That's all right.
Fine.
I get, I'm insanely passionate about stuff like that, and so it gets the best of my language. But they're doing really awesome things up there now, and some of the things are going back to the way they were, which is good, and then there's other things that are changing, which is also good. Before, it was really hard to get into Waverly when I was there before, and I think like the right members of the historical society saw that was like an issue, and that there could be more money to bring in to fix the building. And those members are the ones that are still there now, who was not a part of the craziness. And now it's like a whole thing. So like next year, January 1st rolls around, they'll start dropping dates and stuff like that. And it'll be for like year round, which is awesome. It's something we never did before. In the wintertime was reserved for people that worked in the haunted house. So if you did a haunted house, you didn't want to be paid, you just wanted a simple overnight, you could opt in for either one. So the winter was always reserved for those people. So it's kind of cool to kind of see like it getting a little bit easier to get into now than what it was before. So a lot of good changes and a lot of good things that should have stayed where they were. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, right.
So it was. It's really cool to see that some of those things are happening right now, and that they're not. Nobody's folding under pressure and having any kind of issues. I still every once in a while, like the TikTok account that I have, every once in a while I'll go through my messages and I'll see somebody who's like it'll say something about Tina and Charlie's Army, and I'm like, it's over. Stop
it's
it.
over now.
Stop it. Knock it off. Leave me alone. It was bad though. It was a wild ride, but it was really bad. It was constant. Just it was hard on me. It was hard on my family. I was never home. Nobody wanted to do the job, so it was always just me. During the day, it was Chad, which Chad is still there. But it was only ever me. Nobody wanted to do maintenance. Let me break this down. Nobody wanted to do maintenance. Nobody wanted to do private overnights. No one wanted to do tours. No one wanted to do daytime random tours that they would just book out of nowhere. And I did all of it.
Dang.
So did people not want to do it because of all the turmoil that was happening? Is that what it was for?
No, they didn't want to do it because there wasn't. It's a lot of work. They don't see it for a lot of people. I get called crazy all the time because a lot of people see it as an old building. They don't care. It's fine. They want to go up there. They want to investigate. They want to do this. They want to do that. But they don't see the building for what it is. If there's somebody who's not there to sweep up the holes, somebody's going to fall and break their neck. if there's somebody that's not there to provide or host the overnight, a shout out to Jason, who's actually got my role at the moment. If there's somebody who doesn't want to do that role, guess what? You're not going to get to investigate. If there's somebody who did not clean up the plaster that fell from the ceiling 2 nights ago, example, I'm not saying it happened, I'm just saying, then you're going to see damage and decay all the time, which plaster isn't a big deal. It's still the structure that you have to worry about, not the, the old drywall and stuff like that. But all those things, people, you want the manager position at any job that you're working at because you think it's easy up until the point to where you get it. And I was told multiple times that I was not a manager and I had no authority and I was not in charge, which was unnerving and unsettling. And I didn't ever tell them that I was or pretended to be. But you want that job until it's time to do that job. And then you really factor in who wants to work and who doesn't. And it's just kind of how that is. And some other people, there's volunteers and then there's paid positions and stuff. And some of those paid positions are only for Fridays and Saturdays. That's not enough to live on. So they're not going to want to do everything all the time. That was the only way I was able to be around my passion. We can call it obsession if you want to, all the time, and live and put food in my kids' mouths and, money on the table and everything else, so where you're only getting paid, probably $15-16 an hour. I was able to live because I was doing an insane amount of hours. So it didn't matter, but people don't look at it that way. And some people aren't willing to give up what they're doing for work to have that. So I don't think it's that people didn't want to or didn't necessarily need to. I think a lot of it is because a lot of people had jobs and stuff like that. I just pretty much up and quit my job to be at Waverly full time. The second I got the opportunity, I was in the door. And that's my love and my passion and everything that I've ever had for the place. I've got so much stuff from Waverly in my house. It's not even funny. Just stupid shit too. It doesn't even matter what it is. I've got a key plate that's hanging in this box right here. And then back here in this armoire, there's a hook and there's a glass door plate and stuff, just stupid stuff. That it doesn't even matter. But some people don't get it. If you collect Hot Wheels, no one's going to understand why you wanted the pink Dodge Durango 76 whatever unless they collect Hot Wheels. People aren't going to understand it.
Yeah, but that's historical though. I mean, those pieces that you get, even though they might be small and insignificant to somebody, that's an absolute piece of history.
Yes.
You will not believe. There was a envelope that was online that was from 1936. It's in my thing now. I fought over an envelope on eBay for a week and a half. This guy kept changing the times and whenever the auction was going to start and when it was going to end and everything else. And I was stressing about it over a piece of paper. 1936, stamped Waverly Hills, Kentucky on it. Coming from Waverly to, I think, Detroit, Michigan or something, the family that was in Detroit. And the person I was fighting with finally dropped off, and it was only going to be $1. It was up to $60. And if he dropped out, so it turned back down to $1. And I was excited. And the very next day, someone bid me up to $61 before they stopped. And I was left with a $61 bill. So, I mean, yeah, it's, I'm always looking out for stuff that comes from there, even if it is something as insignificant as a slip of paper that says I was at Waverly at this point and date and time and everything else. It doesn't matter to me. It drives me absolutely insane every time I see something go up and I'm like, another one. Shit.
So are you still active with Waverly?
No. So I am no longer at Waverly. since being gone from Waverly, which I was fired by the Historical Society because I ran my mouth. But ever since then, I had some friends who were creators, and I kind of fell into that creative mode when I was at Waverly because I was doing all the privates and publics. So I was seeing all these other creators coming in, like Kalani Ghost Hunter, Haunted Nights, Sam and Colby, and all these other, bigger names. I know a lot of people don't like them; they don't care for them. But at the end of the day, there's room for everybody.
Sure.
Whether it's demons or it's ghosts or angels. I plan on doing that at some point in time for a YouTube video for a thumbnail where it says, "Did we just talk to an angel?" and just be like this. But just to kill the demon narrative for a little bit and start getting people mad at me, like, you didn't talk to no angel. So some of those friends or some of those people, creators that became friends, they I was down and out about not being at Waverly. I was depressed, damn near suicidal about it.
Aww.
And some of those friends was trying to lift me up, and they was like, "Just do what we do." They was like, "You're gonna find the hole in your heart filled in no time." And I was like, I obviously didn't know where to start. I didn't really know what to do, and so I some friends started booking some locations. Give me 1 second. Didn't realize my laptop was about to die. So a lot of them, they was like, "Go do what we do. Go to these spots. Go check them out. And your hole will fill eventually. And by the time you know it, everything's going to be okay at Waverly, and you're going to be able to do it, whatever you want to do as far as go up there to go visit or, do whatever." So in between that time, and it's just kind of taken off, where I've been going to, over the last 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, something like that, I've been to well over 300 locations.
Oh, wow.
And that's urbexing. That's places you're not typically allowed to go without permission.
But you get permission though, so that's.
I try to. There's some instances in my own. I don't lie to people about it at all.
Sure.
Whatsoever. So if there's a door open, there's a window open, and there is no contact, and there's not going to be. Normally, 9 times out of 10, an abandoned building is going to be, whether it's a house, a hospital, an asylum, whatever the case. Typically, it was left to somebody that didn't know they had it, or the state owns it, and it's hard to get a hold of whoever to get permission from the state or whatever the case. If there's a door open, if there's a window broken, whatever the case, I consider it fair game. 9 times out of 10, if cops do show up, they're just like, "Oh, hey, what do you do?" And you tell them, and they're like, "That's cool. Just make sure you paint us in a good light online and let people know that this isn't a location that they should come to." And that's 9 times out of 10 how it goes.
Well, yeah, and you do the urban explorations. So when you go into these places, it could be a very dangerous situation for you, right?
Yeah, I've walked in on what you typically think about. So drugs, homeless people, which homeless people aren't usually dangerous. Some of them might be a little off the rocker or whatever if they've been homeless for a while. I don't think that I try not to categorize homeless people because it's not fair to them.
Sure.
And, people fall on hard times. I've been to the point where, a couple days I've, have had to live out my car. When I was really early and I was stubborn and stupid and shit. So there was, what it boils down to is, protection, whether it's your carry and conceal or it's like a bottle of mace or, maybe even just like a hand length knife or something. I've never had to pull anything. I've never had to fight anybody or anything like that. I've had some really scary instances, but never to the point to where my life was in jeopardy, I guess, which, there's a first for everything. So, I expect it at some point in time to happen. I've got tons of friends who do that don't do ghost hunting at all. They're just interested in exploring abandoned buildings and seeing and going back and checking out history for the buildings and stuff like that. It just for some reason, every single one of these places just has really bad history. It doesn't matter what it is. Our ancestors. It's wild, I guess. But yeah, it's it just depends on what place you go into. Like I went into a place, and I name drop this because it's been ran through. Normally, I won't name drop a place that's just like strictly for urbexing, but there's a place right outside of Birmingham, Alabama, called the Alabama State Training School for Girls, and this place was notorious for neglect, abuse, and sexual abuse from staff members. Back then, there was no segregation for workers. So, if you were an all-girls school, you probably still had male staff. So there was no segregation there. So there was still like the narrative of, no gay people, no black people, no Asian people. It was all white all the time. And, and these good old boys and these kind of buildings, they were just they weren't right in the head, and they lived by a narrative. They were born into a narrative, and they did nasty stuff like that. And I got to tell you, a lot of these places, just like the state training school, I don't think I've been into a building that didn't have a bad reputation for something. Whether it was sexual abuse, neglect, racism, what do you call it? Segregation, literally anything. I mean, it would be everything from, our brothers and sisters with LGBTQ to, our colored brothers and sisters, whatever the case. There's not been a single building that I had been in that didn't have some kind of issue like that. Unless it was like a mansion or something, it's somebody's home. But I'll tell you a really funny one that has none of that. Just a lot of crazy history, like mentally. Have you ever been to Randolph County Infirmary?
No, huh?
So this place is in Winchester, Indiana. It was an asylum. It was a poorhouse, a poor farm, mental institution. I mean, it was a million things at one time. It was even a small jail at one time also. And this place in the middle of BFE did not have segregation at all. And Winchester's like a little hick town in the middle of BFE, Indiana, had no segregation, but did have separation from male and female. Y'all are looking at me like I'm crazy. This is serious. Like they did not have, in the time that it was normal, they did not have segregation between black people and white people at the time that it was normal. They had a man in there named Alexander who was a African American who was their maintenance guy and who was loved by just about everybody in the building. And everybody, it didn't matter if they had beef with other people. He was like the guy who means everything to everybody because he kept their heat going. He kept their water going, literally everything. But it was, I've been there 3 times now. The first 2 times I didn't know anything about him. And then the second time, and then the third time we went, I was just absolutely blown away. For a point in time where segregation was at its highest, some little hick country town in the middle of BFE, Indiana, did not care at all whatsoever. If you were crazy, you were going to this place. If you had some kind of mental illness, you were going to this place. They didn't care what color you was. They wasn't going to put you on one side of the hospital versus the other. Is absolutely insane, which is like the only place. Like they had their problems. They had their ups and downs and stuff. There was a guy who was pushed out a window by 2 guys. There was a little boy named Noah who died from the measles. That's a big story. It just blows my mind. You go back and look at history for all kinds of other different places. You look at places like Pennhurst Asylum, and that's, it's the shame of Pennsylvania. you could hear cries from the kids coming from the main road. And that's like 2 miles away from the hospital.
Dang.
It's absolutely insane.
I can believe it. Some terrible things went down there.
Yeah.
People just dropped off their kids that were special needs. They didn't know what to do with them. They didn't care to know.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about our ancestors again.
Right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
But just you hear those crazy stories like that, and then you look at a place like Randolph, and you're like, "Oh, they didn't have segregation. That's kind of crazy."
Well, that's good though, in a way.
I know.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
The rarity of it is
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, the place you was just talking about before this one, where there was sexual assault.
School.
Now, tell us, when you walked in to that area, how did it feel?
So,
I mean, could you feel like the despair,
the heaviness, the negativity?
This is different. So normally when I walk into a building that I am just urbexing for, my mind is not on ghost hunting. And I walked into this place blind. I had no knowledge of any history there. I had pulled up to the gate 5 months prior and only flew my drone back there to go to see if the building was still standing. I couldn't get a hold of anybody, so I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to go in. So then 4 months later, I was like, I'm going to go do this, and I don't care. I don't care who's close to the property or whatever. I'm just going to do it because I couldn't get a hold of nobody. Funny enough, halfway through my exploration, I got a call from the state, and they was like, "Yeah, we're going to go ahead and give you permission." I was like, "Well, I'm already here." So I did technically get permission, but I went in blind, and as soon as I walk in, I hear walking upstairs. And I'm like, okay, somebody else is here, because it wasn't like your typical, surely you guys have been on paranormal investigations. You know what it sounds like for someone to be walking on hard concrete floors above you, a real person. And then you hear like the phantom steps, and you're like, oh, there's nobody upstairs. That's so cool. So my immediate reaction was to run upstairs, and that's what I did with nobody there. I started hearing crying at one point in time, walking through there. Didn't hear any voices or anything, but I heard crying, and it was just, you look around and you see a place like the state training school, and there is graffiti everywhere. Nobody cares about this place. It's just fallen into despair. You hear dogs barking, but I think it's like the neighbor probably keeps an eye on the property kind of thing. Because at one point in time, I think the dogs were actually on the street in between the buildings as I was walking through them. It sounded like they were close. But it was it was a heavy feeling. And a lot of sadness, and then a lot of hatred at some points in times. You walk through a place like this, and you don't expect to feel anything. You're just looking at beauty for what it is, and you start seeing and hearing things, and you start getting those feelings as to what it would have felt like for you during that time being there, maybe, or what it felt like for them. 49 clients took settlements from the state training school.
Wow. That
was how much abuse that was running through there. That's how much sexual abuse. 49 clients took settlements from the state because of that. It's a super heavy feeling, without a doubt. And I mean, I get that every once in a while with buildings, and sometimes you'll hear stuff. There's a place that's here in Louisville that's down the street from Waverly that a buddy of mine, his name is AJ. I take him everywhere with me, or he takes me, either way. And he told me about this spot that was down the street from Waverly. And I went over there. I walked in. There was no roof. There's no second floor, and there should be. And you start hearing people walk above you.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, that's weird.
No floor, no ceiling, but you're hearing it. Talk about phantom.
Right?
Yeah.
And that place was just like,
what was it called? Is it just a home or?
I don't know the name of it, but just from the looks of it, we couldn't really find any history on it, even just by looking up the address, because we couldn't find that either. Google doesn't even have it on the address.
Dang.
And it looks like an old automotive shop, which may be why it wasn't exactly on the roster or docket, because it looked like it was out of the 80s.
Yeah.
It probably was abandoned during that time. But you get stuff like that from looking at other places too, though. I've been to probably, we'll say 60% of abandoned locations in Gary, Indiana. And that's like everyone's afraid to go, right? Like that's the big no-no. And it's not like it used to be. So like the crime rate has gone down. There's next to hardly anybody that is trying to start any kind of issues or problems. It's off the top 10 list. At one point in time, Louisville was on the top 10 list. But Gary has since fallen off, and they've started restoration on a lot of things. So like the Union City train station has been abandoned since the 80s. It's now being turned into a concert venue.
Cool.
The City Methodist Church, which is probably the worst, is going to be turned into a ruins garden next year. But a lot of those places over there in Gary are exactly the same, with like the phantom stuff we were talking about. You hear footsteps above you and you look up and there's no ceiling. You're like, what are you talking about? It's weird because I keep ghost hunting out of my mind when I go to check out these abandoned spots that I have to get permission or can't get it at all. And I put it out of my head, and as soon as I walk in, I'm like, I should have brought my equipment. It's wild. It's crazy.
So what do you take with you when you go urban exploring? What kind of stuff do you take? Just a GoPro or a couple GoPros, stuff like that?
No. So I do have a GoPro, but it's not very good for this kind of stuff. GoPros are better for everything daylight, which I do everything in the daylight as far as urban exploring is concerned. But you walk into a building, you walk into an abandoned hospital or something, and they have all the windows are boarded up, or the basement is dark. So GoPros don't work very well. A lot of the times what it is it's this fancy little $20 gimbal from Amazon. Has a light attachment here. I throw my phone on it, I turn the light on, and I go.
Nice.
Because, like I said, 9 times out of 10, I've got 4 cameras now. There's no point in running a camera in an abandoned building during the broad daylight because you're not going to get that quality. And the big light, everybody complains on the investigations when I'm like filming a video or whatever, because I have this big ass light. And they're like, "Oh my god!" And I'm like, you know what? Y'all do this to me all the time. And y'all are gonna get mad at me for it. Give me a break. But my last video at Randolph County Infirmary, they were all yelling at me about the light, and I was like, "Leave me alone."
Well, I mean, really though, at a big public place like that, what are you really expecting to get for an investigation? I mean, you got so many people walking around. It's great to go there for the history, to look around, see what it would have been like back in the day. But as far as like trying to get evidence, forget it.
Oh no, yeah. Well, I mean, none of those are public. So I run with a group called Outcast Paranormal. It was something that was kind of started after the Waverly thing because, the Historical Society fired everybody. So it was just kind of something that we started up, as like not like a tribute or anything, or not like a, middle finger or anything. It was just like we were all outcasted, so it's like 9 times out of 10, it's like 9, maybe 10 of us. So when it's a big building like that, we're able to, split up and get our own evidence, and everyone's super respectful of each other. Every once in every once in a while we'll bring like a couple of other random people that aren't normally our people. Like this last one we brought Philip from Illuminate the Dimensions, I think, and then and a couple others from like downtown Louisville. One of our members, Val, she's now a tour guide down at David Dominy's Haunted Louisville tours or historical tours, and she had some people that wanted to go out to that. And there's always other people. Like I went to Bill Manor with Ashley Marino, who's been a buddy of ours since Cross Country Paranormal, which is what we had right after everything was done. I take all kinds of people with me if they want to go. A buddy of mine, Kayla Salito. She's it's actually, I call her So Little because it's so funny. But I had her come out to meet me at Ohio State Reformatory, and normally I don't just like invite somebody random. And at the time, it was one of those things like you don't usually meet your online people. In that case, I really wanted to because she was a great person. She was always in my like lives, and she was always like hyping me up on everything else. So I was like, you live like an hour and a half away. Why don't you come out and check it out? So 9 times out of 10, I'm never at a public event unless somebody like asks me to go for like a, it's like, hey, you want to go to the bar? I don't do bars, but that's like my bar, Right. You want to go to Waverly for the public? Or like, okay, whatever. That's my bar essentially. I'm not a big drinker or anything, and when I do, it's at home, and that's about it.
And right, it's also going to be different though if it's you and your your friends, your team, because you will know where everybody is.
Yep.
Like instead of a public investigation where you see everybody pay to play, you have no idea where everybody is, and if there's a sound, it travels. So people,
sure,
yeah, people. It just fascinates me if people want to go to investigate at a public place. All our stuff is residential and business locations, but
yeah,
I mean, I think it's a great place to go if you want to learn. If you want to learn how to use a piece of equipment or see what it's like, I think it's great for that. So
and to check the places out.
Yes.
Like.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I love me some Waverly too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Been there 4 times. I love it there.
I think those are great places. Like Vince, he's very passionate about what he does. He's into the preservation, the historical. So that in itself is, that's what it's about.
I mean,
that is what
it's about. You want to talk about restoration and preservation? I have 2 coffins sitting behind me at the moment. I don't know if you can see them. But,
I see.
Yeah.
Those came out of a funeral home that didn't want them, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on live and I'm going to clean these guys up on live or whatever on TikTok, and it went over really well. I just anytime I see something like that, like for instance, this is kind of my moment, my token from these places. During urban exploring, you're not really supposed to take anything. You're supposed to leave it how you left it, but that is usually things that are either left on the ground or are hanging by one screw or something.
Yeah.
Just throw it in the pocket. But but yeah, so those aren't actually clean. Those actually came out of a abandoned place at Sweet Springs. I guess one of the buildings are falling in, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I don't care." but yeah, so they that's kind of like my thing. I'll take those eventually. I'll throw a scrub daddy in a bowl and some hot water and some soap, and I'll scrub at them for an hour or 2 until I get them all cleaned up or whatever. And I'll either put a keychain on them and sell them at an event, or I'll put them in my shadow box up here, and that's about the extent of it.
Yeah,
that's about as far as I go.
Yeah, very good. Now, how many places do you get a chance to go look at? Not so much Waverly and things like that, but like you're going out and you're going to explore and you're going to find some place and you're going to give it a go. How many places do you do? I mean, do you do them all the time, or do you have like a set time that you're going to go do that?
No, so I take it when the opportunity's there. So, for instance, there's a buddy of mine who lives in Maryland. There's a place out there called Forest Haven. And he thinks it's going to be down by the spring. Obviously, they're not going to tear it down during the winter. That's my time. There's any time where it's cold, that means that the brush and everything are going to be dead. Mm-hmm. So everything that grows around these places is all going to be down. It's all going to be dead. Forceful by nature. So that means awesome drone shots. That means awesome, shots around whatever building it is, whatever house. And I'll be able to get into them easier if they, as long as there's a door open or something. But typically it's like if it's far away, I'll plan for it. If it's not already going to be demoed by the time I get there. But I think like the narrative here lately has been we're just going to tear all these places down, even though they're historical landmarks. No. And I'm just like, you're breaking your own law. Like you're ignoring the laws you set in place for ownership for these places. We don't know what to do with it, so we're just going to tear it down. Well, why don't you try first? I don't think any of these like historical places that are currently owned that aren't being done anything with them. They're just sitting out in ruin and decay. Those places don't realize that. You ever been to Washington, D.C. or Philadelphia or any of these places? Even if you're not going to do anything paranormal, there's 1,000,001 places that open up for historical tours. This was George Washington's teeth here. This was John F. Kennedy's, the hood of his car. It doesn't matter. People will go out to those places for all of that because it's not just about paranormal; it's history too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just don't. These places. I'm currently yelling and screaming at a commissioner board right now as we speak about a place that I'm just like, you sold 5 properties last year for $1. There's one right now that's not necessarily in rough shape, but you're not doing anything with it. And I can bring a lot of money to the community and a lot of revenue and a lot of people who might actually drive in and consider this place home. I'm not going to tell you where it is because I don't want your viewers to be like, well, I'm going to go check this place out.
Yes. Don't say, don't say nothing.
But, because they might be like, well, maybe I can get it for more. But yeah, there's a place sitting out right now. I've been yelling at him for a year. I just sent him another email yesterday, and I was just like, hey, it's been 6 months and no word. Haven't heard from you. What do y'all want to do? Because now you're coming into winter, and all you have is boards on the windows. So, let's make something happen. Let's get something going. And I told him everything I wanted to do. It was just like, we're going to do paranormal overnights and investigations. We'll do a Santa's workshop every winter. We'll do a haunted hayride outside every year, and then we'll do a haunted history tour, for the haunt season where I'm not doing the haunted house thing. The tour guides can dress up if they want to, but that's going to be the extent of it for me. I know what it takes to make a haunted house, and I don't want the responsibility.
Right? Sounds like a lot of work.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you. And especially if you have somebody like me, when I was a haunted house actor, I wouldn't stay in my spot. And that's a big no-no, obviously, because, if someone needs you, they don't know where to find you. And I would always get out of my spot to go get 2 or 3 or 4 more scares in before the next group was coming in. And that would piss Tina off and everything. And I didn't do it to piss her off. I did it to, it made me feel good, to make somebody piss their pants. But it is what it is.
So what how do I want to ask this? Because some people, they get, when you see these abandoned places with graffiti everywhere, spray paint everywhere, does that upset you? I mean, I see it and I'm like, man, I wish it was just left alone.
So, ironically enough, There's a place in Saratoga Springs, New York, called the Saratoga County Homestead. It's ran by two guys in a group called Haunted Nights. And there's graffiti everywhere. And Waverly has graffiti too. Yep. A lot of these places are just ransacked with graffiti. Saratoga had a graffiti piece that I actually took a picture of. I had someone digitize it, and it's now my logo. If you are going to, here's my take on it, is that if this place is gone and you are an artist and you're looking for a clean palette, I understand if it's art. If it's art, we don't need to know that Jamie was here in 2019. I don't give a shit. I don't care.
Or
Jamie
that such and such is a slut.
Right. Yeah. There was one at the state training school that quoted an old TikTok video where it said, I was sitting there with barbecue sauce on my titties, and I was just like, are y'all serious? Like that was a funny video, but it wasn't funny enough to spray paint on a building.
Oh man.
So I mean, yeah, funny video, but it's not that funny.
And I definitely see your point. I see your point with if it is art. But
if it's art, I'm totally down for it.
We don't need to see a picture of a penis, or whatever.
Yeah. There's I've walked into a bunch of places that are just full of art, and it's gorgeous. Like there was a place in Tuscaloosa. It was called the Jemison Center. So basically, that was like full-fledged Southern Pride segregation hospital only for African Americans. Blah 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 blah, whatever, yada yada yada. Somebody had went in there in a room, and the building is done. Like it's you can't bring it back. It's too far gone. It's not going to happen. To the point to where some of the floors are falling into concrete floors, so it's gone.
Yeah.
On the first floor, there's a room where somebody went in. You could tell somebody did it, obviously, but they had shoveled all the bricks, all the debris, and everything out of the room to where it was bare concrete. They cleaned it up really nice and neat. They painted every single brick wall in that room and then did their graffiti. And it was gorgeous. That's great. I have no problem with that.
Right.
There was a you would have to see it. Like pictures doesn't do it justice. It's absolutely out of this world. And it was like stuff that had meaning. It wasn't like, oh, well, here's Super Mario or here's whoever. It was gorgeous. Like there was a dragon and like just all, if you're a nerd like me, you love Lord of the Rings, you love Marvel, DC, all that kind of shit. It was magical stuff. There was, this is where it pisses me off. There's a school in Gary called the Emerson High School. And I walk into the gymnasium where the basketball goals are. And there's this really super pretty portrait. Dick outside the mouth.
Oh man.
It's like, dude, are you kidding me? Like somebody was doing what we all want to see. Yeah, you shouldn't graffiti, but if you're going to, be respectful and do it the right way.
Right.
And they did that, and you just screw it up. You screw it up for everybody because, then it's people like us. Then we look at graffiti artists and we're like, well, what kind of art do you do? Do you consider it art? Is it good? Are you just drawing dicks in somebody's mouth?
Right. Yep.
It just depends on the situation, I guess. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not.
Yeah. And I see it, and granted, I see a lot of the kiddish type graffiti, not really good stuff, and it breaks my heart when I see some of these things because I'm like, man, this building is fantastic, and then you see someone drew a dick on the wall or this, yep. and I'm like, come on.
There was my favorite is seeing the word, and it's funny because I play it with my son and my brother, and usually it's just me, but my favorite is seeing the word Fortnite spray painted on the wall. That's the one. That's the one that always gets me. I'm like, oh, a 13-year-old was here.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you have going on for the future? What is your future plans looking like? Because you said about, things are changing and places
we're having technical difficulties.
I know,
Yeah,
I am definitely. but you had said about how things are changing, and now places are being knocked down, things like that. What is your what do you want to see happen with more exploration, things like that?
So the exploration, the whole goal for me. So I had put out a series of videos from Gary, Indiana last year. And it was a lot of content, and people were probably getting bored of it. I think I do pretty well with like doing history and stuff like that. But, you do so much of one thing, people are like, oh my God, I'm so fucking tired of this.
Yeah.
And I put out a whole bunch of videos from Gary, Indiana. I get an email from the mayor. And the mayor tells me that he was turned on to my videos from his grandkids. Now, this was last year, so I don't know elections or anything. I don't even know who the guy's name is. But he wanted to his email was to thank me for my videos being respectful and bringing awareness to the city and to the town. And they've had an increased jump in revenue, which is crazy because my views on those videos aren't that crazy. But I mean, if you live in Gary and you are on TikTok or you're on YouTube or whatever, and you see you're going to see videos from Gary pop up. Even if that person's not from Gary, you're going to see him pop up. So I kind of think that's what it is and what it derived from. But he had said that he saw the city an increase of revenue by about 4 or 5% or something, nothing big, and that gave them encouragement to start doing more. So I think ever since that email that I got last year, my goal is to bring awareness to those states, those buildings. Maybe those cities will start seeing more revenue. Maybe it'll be something similar. I go out to an abandoned city, that only has residents of 400 or 500, and they're like, why are they interested in our city? Why do they care? And then they go and they look at the video and they're like, that's why he cares. And they're like, well, we have an abandoned church here. It doesn't necessarily have to be a church again, but we could probably do something with it. That's my goal for urban exploring. My ghost hunting videos, they're just for fun. But I think my biggest goal is to make these cities, these towns, and even building owners that don't do anything with these buildings to be like, you know what? There's enough people that here's my thought on it. I just watched 17 videos that came out of my building that I didn't even know those people were there. I had no idea because I don't care about it. I could charge people to do this. I could charge people to do this. How do I get help? I start a Facebook page. Alabama State Training School. I can start a Facebook page. My page now has over 50,000 people, and 90% of them are from our town or city. I bet you if I put something up on this Facebook page that says we're going to have a volunteer day to clean up, and I'll offer pizza and whatever, those people are going to come out.
Yes.
It may not be all 50,000, but it's going to be a lot. And you might have some people who run off to go do their own thing, but who cares? You have people that have passion, that have drive, that have love.
Yes. That
some of them just want to be a part of something. At the end of the day, dude, I've got a clean building that people help clean up for free, for pizza. And to walk around an abandoned building, I can go get my LLC. I can go get insurance for the building. and I can start charging people to do this. I can get one of these local guys to be a tour guide. I can get another guy who maybe has a hard time keeping a job because he's probably a night shift kind of guy. He probably doesn't wake up, at the crack of dawn like everybody else, and he could come do my private overnights. And I could pay him whatever, $15, $16 an hour, just to do it on Fridays and Saturdays. Dude, you took 15 years of owning this abandoned building and turned it into success overnight.
And I think. Go ahead.
And I seriously think that the people that own these abandoned buildings that don't do anything with it, and we're not talking about Pennhurst or Waverly or Trans-Allegheny or anything like that, because they're not. We say abandoned, but those places aren't abandoned.
Exactly.
They are owned and operated. There's a difference. You can have an abandoned building be owned.
Yes.
But not do nothing with it. And that's what we're talking about. If they just took some initiative, took some love, some care, and simply, some of these, I've looked up some of the records on some of these owners because it's public record. They're not wealthy by any means.
Right.
They're living paycheck to paycheck just like the rest of us. And they wouldn't have to be. They shouldn't be, especially with having a 190,000 square foot building that, is potentially haunted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. People will pay to go to that.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's not, you ever heard of a tulpa? You know what a tulpa is?
Yep.
Manifest that shit.
Well,
and you'll have ghosts.
Well, manifesting is good, but do we really want to manifest?
No, not in general. I'm just saying, I've talked about Sweet Springs quite a bit to other people, and I'm like, I don't think it's haunted because I didn't get anything. But you need more than a couple days inside of a haunted building to understand. I am first. I'll be the first person to tell you. I was at Waverly every single day, every single night for 2 full years. I was never home, and I could go in there, nothing, crickets, dead silence,
right?
Nothing. The next day, get plaster thrown at me.
Yes.
So, I've got another chance at Sweet Springs in January, but just talking about stuff like that, you never know. And we joke around about stuff like that all the time. Like me and my team or whatever, we'll be going to some investigation outside of Kentucky, and we'll see these abandoned hospitals and stuff, and be like, you know what? Even if they don't have ghosts, we can bring the ghosts.
Right. And that's true. So, yeah, it sounds like you got a lot of good plans, good things. You're very passionate about what you're doing. I love talking to people like you because of the passion. You don't see a lot of it. You see a lot of people, they just want to go and they want to do their thing, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of urban explorers that do the same thing. They just go in, they get their video, that's it, they're done. Yep. So that I really like how you put things. You put it into a good perspective. Sure. And that's a respectable thing.
It's not easy. And I get mad at some owned and operated places too. In my own head, I won't say it out loud, but I'll be like, why is that just sitting on the floor? I'm supposed to be here ghost hunting, and I'm like looking at shit. I'm not there for that, but I'm still like, why? You've owned this place for how many years? Why haven't? This is like a big deal right here. Why hasn't that been done? But as someone who was basically, it's not the role, but basically Waverly's caretaker, I understand, and I also get it. But still, at the same time, I'm like, if I was here, that wouldn't be sitting there like that. That wouldn't be there. I've walked into owned and operated places that are absolutely trashed to no extent. There's no cleaning. Whatever. I was at Pennhurst for the Paracon this past year. It was my first convention ever featuring myself as a vendor for networking. And I had been there once before with a group called Cross Country Paranormal, and the amount of dedication and the amount of love and care that they put into these buildings, just in like a 6 to 7 month time period. I was in the Devon building the first time, and the Devon building was trashed. Like, there was trash everywhere. There was dirt, debris, plaster, all kinds of shit all over the place. And at the time, I was like, "What the fuck are they doing here?" And then I get there for the Paracon, and Devon is cleaned up. It's painted. It has electricity.
Nice.
And everything is picked up and nice and neat. The floors are swept and mopped, except for, you can't get all the paint chips all the fucking time.
Sure.
Excuse my language again. But you can't, just in 7 months, they did more for one building than some owner-operators do in a lifetime.
Right.
It was mind-blowing.
And that's good. I mean, you would think, especially like how much passion you had for Waverly, you sure wouldn't want somebody, their safety to be in jeopardy. No. You know what I mean? So yes, that's perfect. You want to make sure that stuff's picked up.
There were some people that were pissed off about it. It was like it's lost its spookiness. I was like, did you go in the basement? Did you go upstairs? Because if you didn't, it's still like fuck that basement. I'm not. I'll go down there with somebody, but I'm not. No way. The tunnels at Pennhurst are wild. They're spooky. They're scary. If you ever been to the body shoot at Waverly, this is worse.
Yeah, Pennhurst is a bad place. It's very bad.
But they just in 7 months they had turned it into a new building, pretty much.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that's happened. I haven't been there for a long time.
Yeah, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised if you go out there to the if you run out there for the Paracon this year. I'm sure if I remember right, I actually just got an email about vendor spot, but this year I booked myself for Ohio State Reformatory because they have them for whatever reason. Those two companies got to have them on the same weekend. But it's so frustrating because I want to do Pennhurst again for the Paracon, but I didn't do Ohio State. So this year I was like, well, I'll do Ohio State. And I just looked it up. I was like, can I make it work? Like if it's like 1 week apart? And no, they're the same weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like butthurt about it. But I think this year I'm just going to, suck it up and I'm going to go do a private or something, sometime this year with my group. And because I'm not done with Pennhurst by far. I had something tell me in the Devon building to get out, and I need some clarification. So
yeah, I tend to think that of all these places like Pennhurst, I think that Pennhurst has to be the worst.
Oh yeah,
I mean, without a doubt, it's. All the stories, everything you've ever read, everything you've ever seen. I don't know if you've seen Suffer the Children. Was the
dude at the beginning of that. So like if you go onto Roku and you type in Pennhurst, Suffer the Little Children pops up. Yep. And then there's another documentary that talks about it as well. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of both of those, there's warnings that say, hey, look, this was not okay then. It's not okay now.
Yes.
The R word is not acceptable today. It wasn't acceptable then.
Right.
This is for historical purposes. And I'm just like, if it wasn't okay then they shouldn't have done it to begin with.
Exactly. Well, but there was a different mentality, though. I mean,
it was a bad mentality.
Yes,
it was. I agree 100%. Because, if you think about it, it's, just some of the words that they used to describe people with intellectual disabilities and things like that. I mean, it's crazy on what they said.
Yeah, I've got a 4-year-old autistic daughter. So I'm always correcting my son on that word because he gets it from kids at school.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
And I'm just like, this isn't. He's not going to see this anyway, so it doesn't matter. But like one time he came to me and he said he had a dream about one of his buddies, like in that way. And I was like, okay, what's your point? And he was like, well, I feel weird about it. I was like, well, if you feel weird about it, then you ain't gay. Don't worry about it. I was like, but even if you are, it don't matter.
Right.
Like, and if you're worried about me worrying about it, you ain't got to worry about it. And he was just, that's where our society is still at. Like, we think that all that's done with. It's not.
Exactly.
My son was terrified that if any of his friends ever found out about that dream, that they were going to bully him for it. And it's really sad that we still live in a world that it's not okay to be accepted. It's, we still, no matter how much we want to ignore it, there's still racism. There's still segregation in a way. There's still, do you call them homophobes now? Like people who are like somehow scared of gay people or whatever. We still have to live in a society where my son is afraid that if he was, that his classmates are going to bully him for it.
Yes.
And it's sad. It's like we haven't moved as a nation. We haven't moved in society. And it scares me for a lot of people because we talk about places like Pennhurst where that R word was dropped a lot. It was, names like that, like the R word. And if you go if you go look at old postcards from old asylums, they'll say words like idiot and moron. And, the Pennhurst State School for the feeble-minded and epileptic.
Yes.
The Louisiana State Insane Asylum for the idiotic. Like, what?
Right.
Like, I get mad when someone calls me stupid. Like, you're about to call me an idiot,
Right.
It's and we still live in that world because I'll catch my son saying that word every once in a while. I'd be like, dude, where are you? And I'll make him like look over at his sister and just be like, dude, like she has a disability and you should know better. And he'll like break down into tears. And it's sad, but that's what I want him to do. I need him to understand how wrong it is. And he was just like, I didn't think nothing of it. My friends say it all the time, and it just da-da-da-da-da. I was like, I understand it being a part of your vocabulary because of your friends, but you need to unlearn that shit today.
Yeah, yeah. I asked one time, me and somebody got into an argument about people with intellectual disabilities, things like that. And I was like, what is your hang up with these people? I was like, there's nothing wrong with them. And they're like, well, they're different. I was like,
oh different. Man, that was a good boy voice. Let me hear it again.
They're different.
They're different.
They're different.
Where'd that come
from? They're different. And I think to myself, I'm like, how do you determine what is different and what is normal? And you know what I mean? If you have
everybody's fucking different.
That's right.
For some crack jaw hillbilly to say, well, they're different. Well, you're different.
Yes.
Right? Listen to the way you talk.
Yeah.
Like who has that accent? And people from the South do.
Right.
Because you guys are different. It doesn't make it okay for you to pretend like because someone else is different. Like you're going to go to Jersey and you're going to hear somebody talk about, well, take your fucking kneecaps, however, I don't know the accent, but like,
you can do the accent.
Hey, let me tell you about Vinny, okay? Vinny.
There you go. But yeah, everybody's different.
Yes.
Just because someone's different, you're not going to, my grandfather, and it's not he used to use the N-word all the time, but then he would tell me stories about his friend when he worked at GE. I don't know if you know what GE is. It's if you ever, like, your fridge is made by GE.
Oh, General Electric.
Yeah,
okay,
General
yes.
Electric.
Yeah. So when he worked for the processing company back in the 50s, 60s, he would talk about his friend Jimmy Bill, and Jimmy Bill was a black guy, and he'd talk about how much he loved him and he missed him and he passed away and da 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 da. And I'd be like, Grandpa, you can't talk that way. And also, like, have love for that person, because that person is going to be hurt by what you say.
Yeah.
I was like, there's nothing there. Like, all the love and passion you say you have for Jimmy Bill is gone, because he's hurt. If he was alive today and he heard what you said, he'd be hurt and he probably wouldn't talk to you again.
Right.
Because he was getting it from all the other workers, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and because he was different.
That's right. That's right. It's like you said earlier. We are stuck in this society where everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change anything.
Yep.
Nobody wants to look at things with an open mind. They don't want to look at the big picture. They want to look at everything.
They're too busy worshiping presidents.
Yes.
They're too busy worshiping people who don't need to be worshipped.
Right.
Or worshipped. Sorry, I
thought he was going back to Jersey there.
No, you have these people walking around with Donald Trump T-shirts and Biden T-shirts and shit, and I'm like, these aren't your gods. Right. They're people who are supposed to stand up for us.
That's right. And I see a lot of that.
And they have that mindset for everything.
Yes.
That's why our country is so divided, is because everyone is so enveloped in T-shirts and political propaganda and all this other ignorant shit. Somebody asked me the other day if there was a celebrity, I don't make fun of either one of them, because I hoping for Joe Biden to fail is like shooting a bullet or shooting a gun in a boat and hoping it don't sink.
Right.
So I may not like it, but at the end of the day, I hope he succeeds in whatever we're doing. It's the same with Donald Trump. I could care less.
Right.
Just don't sink our ship.
Yes.
Right.
And they and a lot of these people, they don't look at it that way. They just pretend that, like, well, my side's left, so we're all about this, or my side's right, so we're all about that, and everyone forgets about the guy in the middle.
Yeah.
And they make stupid names for all of them, and it's our country is so divided to the point to where all of these different issues, even with like urban exploring, like I was talking about, that serious things get forgotten about.
Yes.
Like these buildings, people of color having the same rights as people who are white, or people who are gay having the same reason to love and marry like straight people, or whatever the case. It doesn't matter. Everybody should have the same rights. But at the end of the day, they don't care.
Right.
They're too busy worried about, who they're going to vote for next term, or whatever the case. It's so... The political propaganda drives me nuts.
And that's why we need more people like yourself and me and Ronnie, and more people to go to their city councils and say, look, we have these properties that something could be done with them to help generate money, instead of letting them just sit there and turn
this place that I want to buy is right across the street from a Walmart. What paranormal investigation team wouldn't love that?
Sure.
Dude, how many places are in the middle of bumfuck nowhere?
Right?
Yep.
You don't have any signal. Like, if you're like me, you don't have any signal to go live on TikTok, to update people on Instagram, or to share your stuff out at these locations, because there's no Wi-Fi.
Right.
There's no signal. You ain't got nothing. If you go to Sweet Springs, the most you're getting out is maybe a worded post on Facebook. You're not getting anything else. So this place has signal. It could have Wi-Fi too if it needed it. There's a McDonald's down the street. There's a Taco Bell down the street. There's a Walmart. There's a Kroger. Everything is right there. And the city itself, I think is under 500,000 on as far as like, as far as quantity, how many people live there. Dude, I could bring so much revenue to the city. It's not even funny. And the property that goes along with the building is like 5 acres. I could build a corn maze.
Sure.
I could harvest corn, and that corn, when the maze is done with, can go to a local farmer or whatever. They can come plow it every season, whatever the case. We could put a maze in there. I could every winter we could have kids come out for Santa. During the haunted house season, we could have that haunted maze. We could have haunted tours through there. And the commissioner's office is like, well, we don't. What are you going to do with the recycling plant? And I'm like, leave it.
Right.
Like in the parking lot in the back, they have like the tubs and the distribution center.
Right.
And they was like, well, how much are you going to charge them? I was like, I'm not. They were there first. I might own the property and the building, but they were there first. And for the city, I almost said the name. For that city, they know where the recycling plant is. That's where they drop off their plastics, their aluminum. They drop off their trash if they live in an apartment complex that doesn't have, dumpsters, whatever the case. That's where they go to drop everything off. And as you know, and I not just talking about for myself, like obviously it'll be for profit, but at the same time, all the money's going back into the building or the money's going into whatever the case. There's no reason to take away from the city if I'm also trying to help the city.
Right.
Because at the same point in time, me not moving the recycling plant helps the city. They don't have to go find the new one. Nothing changes except for the fact that now they've got a place to go see Santa in the winter.
Right.
Now they've got a place to go see. Now they've got a place to go to a new haunted house every year. A haunted tour. Sorry.
Sure.
Like I said, I ain't doing no haunted house. But now they've got all these new options. They don't just have to go to the other 5 haunts that are, outside of that city anymore. They don't have to, and then people, and then creators, that brings in big revenue.
Yes.
I've talked to Kalani and Haunted Nights and all them about it, and they're like, dude, the second you get it, or the second before you even start cleaning up, I was like, no, I'm cleaning up first. But they're like, yeah, let us in or whatever, and and we'll push the place to the max. That right there alone is going to bring in so much revenue because people, at some point they're going to be like, well, Sam and Colby were just here. That's kind of crazy. Well, if you think that's crazy, check out this event that we're going to have with a meet and greet from them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then at the same time, I think they just they announced a partnership with Zoomies or something like that, mall store or whatever. And then you get a second chance to go see them elsewhere. Like, I mean, there's 1,000,001 different possibilities that people don't even look at.
Right.
And I mean, there's so many endless possibilities. Like I said, I've been to well over 300 locations, and 75% of those places are not operated. The other 15% or the other 25% is, what we all love and what we know. It's Pennhurst and Trans-Allegheny and West Virginia Penitentiary and places like that. But I'm chomping at the bit for this location. It's driving me absolutely crazy.
Well, we hope you get it. That's for sure. Hey, Vince, where can people find you? If somebody they hear this and they go, man, we want to know more about Vince here. Where we got to go?
If you go to theurbaninvestigator.com, everything's linked there. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And I operate a lot of creators don't even play with TikTok or with Facebook. I do. I'm an older head. I'm not a young creator by any means. I'm 35 years old. We all started with Facebook after MySpace and, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of become the narrative, for the older people to be on there and then the younger people to be on the other networks. or the other platforms. So I'm highly involved on or highly developed on Facebook, and TikTok is where you get the goofy stuff most of the time. I do some documentary style videos there. I have since slowed down on YouTube. It's very hard to get off the ground.
Yes, it is.
But so YouTube sits at like right under 500 right now. So I'm kind of taking a leave from that. I'm only going to be posting a video, a full length video to YouTube at once a month instead of once every week, because that's what I was doing and I was killing myself.
Yeah.
So daily to everyday uploads on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and YouTube for shorts, and then once a month on YouTube. I'm always putting out new stuff on my Etsy store and my merch store on Bonfire and Etsy. We just sold out of a bunch of what I called haunted mystery grab bags. So basically stuff that came from haunted locations that you wouldn't be able to typically get yourself, or whatever the case. And some of them they're all different. Some of them are screws, or some of them are like key plates, or whatever the case. Some of them are postcards. But we just sold out of that, and I'll be doing more of that probably next year at some point in time. And just so nobody gets twisted, any one of my friends who are listening to this, my idea and my inspiration from that bag came from a fellow friend and creator called Becky Galentine. You guys should reach out to her for your podcast, by the way. My Bloody Galentine is her handle everywhere. But she does I don't think she calls it this, but she does like haunted boxes, which is kind of the same like thing, but it's more, but there's more. And it travels from different places, and like I bought one immediately, like whenever she first put them out, and it came with moss, like Spanish moss, in a bottle from Savannah, Georgia, from a haunted cemetery. It came with a postcard from Ursuline Covenant in Louisiana, the place where they thought they were holding witches and vampires.
Yeah.
She's an awesome creator. She's been a really good friend to me. But my inspiration for those haunted grab bags came from her.
Nice.
So just like a little shout out there, but yeah, theurbaninvestigator.com and at the Urban Investigator everywhere.
Awesome. Well, Vince, you've been great to talk with. I learned a lot, and I definitely am going to want to have you come back on so we can catch up and see where you're going, and what all these new things you got happening. And yes, we want to thank you so much for coming on.
It was fun.
And talking. Yes, we had a very good time. We was looking forward to this episode.
Yeah.
I will talk your ear off if you let me. So I love doing podcasts.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
We will definitely get you back on. All right, Vince. Well, thank you so much, and we hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much. Thanks
All right.
for having me.
Good night.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning in with us tonight, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content from Paranormal Podcast is made available. If you believe you have something paranormal happening in your home or business, or you believe you may have witnessed a UFO or UAP, please send us your story, your photos, videos, questions, suggestions, and your comments to paranormallypodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit us at www.paranormallypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Hey, thanks again for watching and listening, and I hope that you tune in for next week's episode of Paranomaly. Hey, a word of caution. Paranormal Podcast and its affiliates or hosts do not verify or check the validity of any person, team, or its members. Paranormal Podcast highly advises that you proceed with caution when contacting any person or team before allowing them and having them into your home or business. A legit paranormal research and investigation team will never charge you a fee to investigate your home or business. They do, however, accept donations to help further the research and investigations if you so choose to do so. All right, thanks everybody.